Hello and welcome to the second video about feedback in the series. In the first video we uncovered a little bit more about radical candor way of thinking about feedback or guidance and how to actually think about it in like a bigger picture perspective. We need to take really deeper consideration about our team members, care personally for them, build trust and psychological safety in the teams, and also be able to challenge them directly, be able to openly communicate when and where they're actually screwing up. And it might sound very, very simple, but in the reality it rarely happens. I can count many times when I saw, for example, in a meeting, colleagues struggling to express their ideas, not because they don't have those ideas or not because they are lack of those, but because they do not feel trust or they do not feel that psychological safety and they are unable to challenge each other directly. I remember when a new team member comes into team and they are still a little bit looking around, trying to understand what there are like social constructs around, and they are not feeling really safe in the very beginning. But once we do these very concrete, very actionable steps in order to ignite that trust, in order to really build that relationship within our team, then they are starting to open up. And we as managers and as leaders, we have to take care of those phases after the initial opening up. So if we do not have that structure that holds everything together, it's really hard for us to maintain that taking caring personally of your team and also being able to challenge directly. I believe that great teamwork is not an accident, and we cannot just wait for the great teamwork to occur, or we do not have to trust that there will be some magical personalities that are ongoing, that are open, that are able to challenge directly, just like waking up in the morning. So one of like concrete methods of how we can use radical candor as a way of thinking and going more into actions and more into behaviors called non-violence communication. It based on very like historical principles where the compassion is at heart, where we do not want to do any harm for other person. So the communication where there is no violence helps us not only to communicate what we are feeling, but also to feel empathetic about the other person and what they're saying. Because some of us are fortunate enough to have colleagues that knows radical candor way and they are able to discuss it with you freely, while majority of the people are not so lucky and they need to understand how they can filter the information, how they can understand the gems of improvement and actually take advantage of it. So let me explain. So nonviolent communication sounds simple, and I want you to dive a little bit deeper and look what you can use of it. So it consists mainly of just two parts. So there is expression and there is also empathy. As you probably already understood, expression is more about how you are communicating to the world, and empathy is about how you are receiving the information and what kind of insights you can make in order to change or adapt your behavior, or maybe do nothing if there is nothing to do about. So let's begin with the expression part. As you can see, there are a few parts within the expression, subparts if you may. Observation, feeling, need, and request. First of all, we start with the observation. We are starting by communicating what we are seeing, what we are hearing, and what is the context that we are operating within. Because for us, sometimes it's hard to understand that everyone has a story and everyone has also as complicated lives as ours, or even more complicated. And we fail to understand that context is truly what makes or breaks great feedback or guidance. So sharing your context, sharing the place where you're coming from is crucially important while expressing your opinion. Then we are sharing feelings, or we are sharing emotions, how we are actually feeling about the context, how we are feeling about that observation that we just have made. Then we are moving towards need, towards more like a macro or bigger picture overview. What do you need from the other person? Why you're actually communicating for them? What is the end goal of this conversation that we are currently having? And finally, we are slowly but effectively moving to the request phase, where we are talking about actions that needs to be taken in order to, complete the process. I want to share the example so that will be easier to understand. So first of all, observation, right? I remember that it was one client of mine, one of the biggest retailers in the planet. We had these kind of strict conversations, and we had this very structured presentations about our results, and we had the presentation about like quarterly results and like results in a week, results in like agile sprint, and a lot of those. And I remember that after one quarterly results meeting, and the quarter was really successful, we launched a lot of stores, we went live in a lot of different parts of the business. So it was really important accomplishment. And the feedback that I shared with one of my managers, with one of my project managers that I was supervising, is that they were putting a lot of spotlight on the management part of the project, and the delivery or development part of the project seemed to be a little left out. And I thought that, you know, developers, for example, or business analysts or data scientists that were working together might feel a little unease about this conversation, and I wanted to share my feedback. So I said, you know, when I saw your presentation about the results, it seemed to be, you know, really great. But also what I noticed is that you put a lot of spotlight on the managerial side of the project, and you left the delivery and development part. And, you know, I feel about it, you know, a bit unease and a bit, you know, maybe sad, because what I actually need, I need that every and each of our team will feel that they are impactful to the final result. I need that every developer and every data scientist will understand that this is truly important, not in our like internal organization, but it's also truly important how we are communicating with the client. And then I'm moving to the request. Would you be willing next time when you do this presentation, you know, to have at least equal attention to the managerial side and to delivery development side, and not left either of those out? So it might sound very simple, right? Or it might sound very structural, but once you get used to it, it becomes really natural, and you are doing it just like with the flow. Of course, it takes practice a little bit, but once you notice, I really care about the person, I really care about the team, and I am able to challenge them directly. I'm able to, you know, hold myself in this a bit uncomfortable conversation. I'm able to embrace the discomfort that comes with it. And now, very important thing that you may or may not notice. When I was sharing about the feelings, about the observation, I used the thing, you know, your presentation went okay, or your presentation went well, but, you know, the huge word but, something happened. And some psychologists said that, you know, unconsciously, when we hear the word but, we somehow strike through what was being said in before, and we are focusing on the other side of the sentence. And it might be true or might be not, but what is important is that your language and your flow should be natural. You shouldn't, you know, constrain yourself with the method or tool just to be right by the book, you know, just to be right by the letter. It's more about building the connection. It's more about building the relationship. And I strongly suggest you do not take care and do not put your attention to these kind of small details, because in the end of the day, what really matters to show your context, to show that you are actually caring about the person and you actually care about the topic that is being discussed, and effectively move towards the request or action phase. Because, as I mentioned before, the main goal, the end goal of the guidance or feedback is changed behavior. We need to change behavior, we need to suggest some kind of changes in order to move forward, in order to improve ourselves. And in this area where I shared the example with you, that project manager changed her presentation, and the second presentation went really well. And actually what she said to me is that, you know, Thomas, I didn't even know that, you know, once I was putting the presentation, for me it seemed that I am giving the equal attention both to delivery side, both to managers or business analysts, and I you know, I didn't have any thought that it might be different, right? So that's why we need to share our context. That's why we need to understand where we are coming from, but also where the other person comes from as well. Now, the second part is empathy. And empathy is about receiving the information or receiving data from the outside world and making the decisions, making the insights based on it, right? And as I mentioned, not all of us are fortunate enough to have colleagues who knows the nonviolent communication way or who can communicate in some kind of structural manner. So let them help, and let's put more structure on it, right? So first of all, observation, right? We're thinking about what the person sees. Maybe we can even start a discussion or conversation, because feedback doesn't have to be just one-way street. We can, discuss. We can go to the conversation in order to understand better what are the contexts that the person is operating in. So you might say that, when you see something happens, I feel, or I see that you are feeling in this particular way or another. Now, speaking about the feelings of emotions, it really helps us and really helps the other person to ground in ourselves and to actually think of what does it make us feel. It's no surprise that emotional intelligence is becoming more and more important in our workplace, and it actually shapes us as human beings. It shapes our behaviors, it shapes the decisions that we made. So we cannot ignore that, and we cannot see it as a small thing in our conversations. So, what you are feeling, are you maybe feeling sad about this? Are you feeling discouraged about what is happening? How you're feeling about that. Second, what is the need? Understand what is the need of the person that they are asking for you to change, for example, something, or they are asking for you to shape your behavior in some way. And finally, a request. You can take your priority and prioritize what action you can take in order for other person to feel better. Because in the end of the day, the only way to show that the feedback is important for you is to make an action. It's not enough to say thank you for your feedback. It's not enough to say thank you for your guidance. We have to actually act, or if we are already seeing that we cannot act in a certain way, we also need to be open about it and do not make fake promises, which we cannot take. Right? And when we are seeing, it actually really relates with each other. For example, even if we are expressing our feedback, if we are sharing some kind of commentary with the other person, once we finished, we can go to the other part and ask them how you are feeling, what you are thinking, right? Let's discuss about it. Let's have dialogue about it, because I strongly believe that feedback shouldn't be just a one-way street. We have to communicate with each other. We have to take the part in something bigger. And it's not enough just to express everything and believe or assume that it was heard. I don't remember quite exactly who said that, but it sounds like that. The biggest mistake in communication is thinking that it took place. It means that we might assume that something was understood in conversation, that the person made some kind of decisions, but we actually cannot really know before we ask them and before we have conversations. So I really acknowledge and encourage you to understand this structure and to think of ways how you can do it in your way, how you can actually adapt a little bit, maybe adapt some parts. Maybe you are feeling better about explaining the context, maybe you're feeling better about requesting of action. So think about it a little bit and then see it how you can, looking throughout the lenses of radical candor, use the nonviolent communication way to improve your guidance skills, not only expressing it, but also feeling empathy and developing your emotional intelligence.